Mist clung to the base of empty Fuji like something alive, not like normal fog. This mist didn't drift. It crept, it crawled low over the ground, curling around roots and rocks like pale fingers searching for warmth. It rolled through the underbrush in slow waves, thick enough to swallow sound and soften distance. The world beyond it felt unreal, like it had been erased. Above the mist, the first trees of Aokigahara rose in silence. They weren't ordinary trees. They twisted upward in unnatural angles, trunks warped as if they had grown around invisible pressure. Their branches reached out like frozen arms, tangled and clawed, bending toward the path like they were trying to block it. The forest didn't feel like nature. It felt like a warning. Light filtered through the canopy in fractured shards, but it never truly brightened anything. It only painted the ground in dull green smears, sickly and faint, as if the sunlight itself was afraid to enter. Even the air was wrong. Breathing felt heavier, hair thick, damp, and stale, like inhaling something that had been trapped underground for centuries. Every breath tasted faintly metallic, like whetstone, like rusted iron, and inside Aokigahara sound behaved differently. Footsteps didn't echo, they disappeared. The moss was so thick it swallowed every crunch of leaves, every snap of twig. Even movement felt muted, as if the forest absorbed it greedily, stealing proof that anything had ever been there. No birds sang, no insects buzzed, nothing stirred. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was predatory, waiting. A narrow trail cut through the trees, barely more than flattened dirt and crushed leaves. Half-faded tape hung from branches like old scars, fluttering weakly despite the absence of wind. It didn't look like guidance. It looked like someone had marked the boundary of a cage. Deeper into the forest, the ground changed. The soil hardened, but unevenly. Beneath the surface lay volcanic rock, sharp and jagged, hidden under moss and leaves. The roots of the trees snaked across the earth like veins, thick and dark, crossing the path again and again as if trying to trip anyone foolish enough to continue. The trees grew closer together, their trunks pressed inward, crowding the trail, narrowing it until it felt like walking through a corridor made of bark and shadow. And then the first sound appeared, not loud, not clear, just a faint murmur, a whisper, so soft it almost felt imagined. At first it seemed like wind slipping through leaves, except there was no wind. The branches didn't sway, the canopy didn't move, but the whisper continued. It rose and fell like breathing, slow, deliberate. It didn't come from one direction, it came from everywhere at once. The sound wrapped around the trees, slid between trunks, crawled along the mossy ground, and pressed itself into the ears like warm breath. The deeper the trail went, the louder it became. Not enough to understand, just enough to make the mind strain, desperate to interpret the sound. And that's when it began to feel like the forest wasn't whispering. It was trying to speak. The shadows between the trees thickened. They stretched in ways that didn't match the light above. Some shadows moved too slowly, others shifted too quickly, gliding across the forest floor like something crawling. The mist seemed heavier now. It clung to ankles, pulling downward, turning each step into a slow drag. The air pressed against the chest like wet cloth, tightening around ribs. Even time felt different. Minutes stretched too long. Silence became unbearable. The whispering grew stronger. It changed. The sound became wetter, harsher, like breath pulled through waterlogged lungs. It carried a faint rasp, like something with no throat forcing itself to make noise anyway. The path curved gently, then curved again, and again. It began to spiral without reason. The trees on both sides grew darker, bark slick as if permanently damp. Their trunks merged in strange formations, bulbous and fused, like bodies pressed together. The forest wasn't growing, it was closing. Then something appeared in the corner of vision, a shape, tall, thin, standing between the trees. It didn't move, it didn't breathe. It wasn't a person, it wasn't an animal. It was a silhouette made from shadow itself, too dark, too solid, like a stain on reality. The moment the eyes turned toward it, the shape was gone, not moved, not hidden, just gone. The whispering continued, but it shifted tone almost as if it reacted, almost as if it noticed. Far ahead, the ground dipped into a hollow, the trail descended, and the trees changed again. Their trunks leaned inward in subtle arcs, forming a natural circle. The canopy above thickened until it became a ceiling. Light faded into a dim green gloom, and then the forest opened. A clearing, a perfect clearing, ringed by trees arranged in a circle so symmetrical it looked deliberate, like something had shaped it. Like the forest had grown around this spot for a reason. The ground was covered in leaves, but the leaves didn't crunch. They sank, soft, spongy, as if they covered soil that was too loose, too wet, too hollow beneath. The whispering stopped. Instantly, The silence slammed down like a physical force. The air became still. Even the mist froze in place. It felt like the entire forest held its breath, waiting, listening, and then, the forest breathed. Leaves rose upward as if exhaled from below, not blown, lifted. The ground beneath the clearing pulsed once, subtle but undeniably like the slow heartbeat of something massive sleeping under the earth. The trees creaked, not from wind, from pressure. Their trunks groaned deeply, ancient and strained, as if roots were shifting beneath the soil like muscles contracting. Then the center of the clearing began to sink, slowly, deliberately. A depression formed in the leaves, pressing downward into the ground as if something underneath pushed upward at the same time. The shape became unmistakable. A human outline, shoulders, torso, arms too long, too thin, stretching outward beneath the leaves like a corpse trapped just beneath the surface. The whispering returned, but it was different now. No longer soft, no longer distant. It rose in volume until it filled the clearing completely, surrounding everything in a chorus of voices layered on top of each other, not speaking words, speaking intention, urgency, hunger. The air vibrated with it. The sound crawled into the skull, shaking the bones behind the eyes. The depression shifted. The outline moved, not rising, reaching, fingers pressed upward beneath the leaves. They pushed slowly, forming ridges and bumps. Long fingers, too many joints. The leaves cracked and sank around them. The ground pulsed again. Once, twice. The depression widened, spreading like a mouth opening. The leaves began sliding inward toward the center, drawn downward as if pulled by suction. Then the earth split, not with a loud crack, with a quiet tearing sound, wet and heavy. The clearing opened like a wound. Leaves sank rapidly into the gap, vanishing into darkness. And from within that darkness, something unfolded. A shape rose slowly, stretching upward in unnatural ripples, not climbing, not standing, unfolding like something that had been compressed into the earth and was now expanding back into its true form. It was tall, far too tall. Its silhouette scraped the low branches of the canopy. It didn't have skin, it didn't have detail. It was darkness shaped into something humanoid, but wrong edges shifting, bending like smoke. Its arms were too long, its torso too narrow. Its head tilted slightly, as if listening. It had no face. But the feeling of being watched hit instantly, heavy, crushing, as if invisible eyes locked onto the body and pinned it in place. The air turned cold, not like winter cold, like the cold of deep water, like the cold of grave soil. The trees groaned again, bending inward. Roots beneath the clearing shifted. The ground vibrated. The whispering rose into a deafening, raw voices layered so tightly they became one massive sound, a single endless exhale of the forest itself. And the shape leaned forward, not moving its feet, just gliding, drifting closer without sound. The mist thickened, wrapping around its limbs like cloth. And then the whispering stopped again, abrupt, violent. Silence returned so fast it felt like the ears popped. The shape froze. The entire clearing froze. The forest held its breath once more, and then, the silhouette dissolved. It melted into the shadows, not fading away, not retreating. It simply became the darkness between the trees again, as if it had never existed. The clearing returned to stillness. Leaves settled. The ground sealed itself shut. The air warmed slightly. The forest breathed normally again, but something was wrong. The trail was gone. Behind the clearing, there was no path. Only trees, endless trees, dense, twisted, leaning inward like walls. The tape markers were missing. The direction back was erased. The whispering returned, soft and distant again, as if nothing had happened. But now it didn't sound random. Now it sounded inviting, guiding, beckoning, calling deeper. The mist began to drift again, curling toward the darker parts of the forest. The shadows between the trees shifted, stretching toward the clearing like fingers, and somewhere far beyond the canopy, something moved. Not footsteps, not animals. A slow dragging sound beneath the earth. A weight shifting below the roots. A presence circling, patient, waiting for movement, waiting for fear, waiting for the forest to finish what it started. The whispering grew slightly louder, not aggressive, almost gentle, almost comforting, like a voice trying to guide someone home. But the deeper the sound drifted, the darker the trees became, and the less the light seemed to exist at all. Aokigahara had noticed, and it never forgot the ones who entered too far. Because in this forest, you don't get lost. The forest simply decides, you no longer belong anywhere else.